A food desert is an area in this country made up of a community where a large percentage of the people who live there lack access to fresh fruits, vegetables, and other healthy whole foods on a regular and routine basis. Many major metropolitan areas are considered to be food deserts. In Minnesota, the largest metropolitan area of our state, the Twin Cities, over 1/2 of Minneapolis and nearly 1/3 of St. Paul is considered by the U.S. Department of Agriculture to be a food desert. And when you think about it, though the fact is scary, it does make sense. Very little food is grown in the urban areas. And many people, especially low-income people, live in neighborhoods where they simply don't have access to real grocery stores. They are often left with just the corner mart with an array of packaged and processed foods as their only option. But this is a story of the heartland of Minnesota, surrounded by majestic forests, peaceful lakes, and bountiful farmland that stretches beyond the horizon. Surely, this cannot be a food desert. That is the paradox of our unhealthy food system. Many rural towns lack access to nutritional food. To put it simply, our current food system is failing the very communities that grow our food. What does rural America do about this problem? How do we lift up our small family farmers, maintain our wealth, keep dollars circulating locally, and provide nutritious and wholesome foods to our children, seniors, and those who would likely go hungry? How do we identify gaps and barriers, strategies, and best practices to address these problems? We invite you on the journey of Sprout, a regional food hub, and the funders, growers, makers, dreamers, and visionaries that helped build a facility in rural Minnesota to help address these issues. Listen to the Sprout story and meet the Sprout team. A little over a decade ago, Arlene and Bob Jones bought an 80-acre farm a few miles south of the rural town of Brainerd, Minnesota. This parcel later became known as the Farm on St. Matthias.
The very first time I pulled into that driveway, it was a sea of barren, old field of weeds upon weeds upon weeds upon weeds. It hadn't been used for 15 years. It had an abandoned trailer on it, which was utilized as the last homestead. The barn was completely falling into itself. Roof of the barn had many, many holes in it. The top of the barn was what I called Pigeon Hollow. The pigeons had made it their home. And then really just trying to figure out which parcels to plow and try to turn into soils that would develop food. And the beauty of it is that they were rich fields because they hadn't been utilized for so many years. And so the soil was actually very, very rich and produced very, very well.
As the Joneses were developing their farm enterprise as growers, the Regional Development Commission, Region 5, and its executive director, Cheryl Lee Hills, was building the economy of local foods through buyers.
The transition of moving from just Bob and Arlene operating the farm, and it's always been a family operation. So it's always been Bob and Arlene and their children and their grandchildren and their parents and then their extended siblings. And so it's always been this beautiful web of family that has operated the farm. When it extended bigger beyond just our family was when we realized that this work was too important and that we needed other people, like I said, to help us do the work. And so we started connecting ourselves to other groups, the Sustainable Farming Association. We became master gardeners. We took our food safety certification, and we just started to really dive in deep to the education and the networks that we needed to learn and understand all of the intricacies of moving through food and food safety and distribution and logistics and all of that. And I think once we just started to branch out, then the people started to come in. So I think it was a beautiful kind of fluidity of we were reaching out and people were reaching in at the same time because of the local foods movement. And I think people saw us as leaders because we have always been engaged in our community. And so I think they saw us reaching out and they started reaching in. So I think It was a beautiful fluid movement that happened simultaneously.
Through this process, as the University of Minnesota, in association with the nonprofit Renewing the Countryside, were setting their focus on grower-buyer networks, Farm to School was launched in central Minnesota. But there are challenges in starting a farm-to-school program. Large school districts require a greater volume of produce on a consistent basis, and one farm cannot fill that niche.
The University of Minnesota put its resources into farm to school, understanding that there was huge potential for economic development for growers, but also for nutritional assets for our school-age children who, when we know that they have adequate nutrition, that they're learning at a greater level. And so you've got academia coming together with Sustainable Farming Association, with growers and with buyers. And it was at those meetings where communities really started to just come together and understand that we had potential and we had possibility. And so the Region 5 development happened at about the same time the farm to school development happened, at about the same time where we realized that the work that the Farm on St. Matthias was doing in engaging farm to school and scaling up the volume that we put into the schools by adding growers was all kind of simultaneous, and we realized that we were doing food hub work at that time. And then Region 5 on the buyer side from economic development, and the Farm on St. Matthias on the grower side from creating markets to keep our ag land and ag production and supporting our small family farmers, just kind of came together at about the same time.
It took champions, from Arlene Jones and Cheryl Hills to Ms. Colette Polkamp, the food service director of Independent School District 181. Colette alone took the courage to launch Farm to School within her buyer group of 7 districts.
Colette was the food service director for Brainerd School District. Brainerd School District is the largest district in central Minnesota. 7 schools in the Brainerd area, serving about 5,000 meals a day. But Colette was also the lead food service director in charge of negotiating the buying contract with the larger broadline distributor. So she was in charge of negotiating the contract for 7 other districts in central Minnesota. So Colette was very well known and very well connected. And when Colette decided that she was going to do farm to school for the Brainerd district, Colette led 7 other districts to the finish line for farm to school, saying, we can do this. We're going to take baby steps, but we are going to support our farms, and we are going to feed our kids healthy, nutritious foods. And while we only started with 1 school in the Brainerd district, we eventually got it through all schools that had self-serving kitchens, and then figured out the barriers for distribution and got it into all of the heat and serve kitchens as well. And then all of the other districts came on board as they saw successes through the Brainerd program. And unfortunately, Colette passed away in May of 2016, and we lost a huge champion.
With numerous partners, from growers to economic development consultants, software specialists and restaurateurs, and a background ranging from the ground to the sky, the region launched Sprout Minnesota, a local food hub, in 2012. From legal status to marketing, the momentum kept growing. With widespread community engagement and a foundational mission to support all growers, Sprout focused on underserved communities, including Amish, Latino, and tribal growers. These populations had limited venues to bring their commodities to market. Though they had excellent experience growing food for fodder as well as sustenance, they were routinely left out of traditional markets.
It was actually very fortuitous. There are growers in the Staples area who had been connected to the Amish community as Amish populations continue to increase in the Todd County area, and the Amish had been doing some of the farmers markets in the Staples area, and as Sprout was expanding its growers base, became connected to not only the growers in the Staples area, but those connections naturally developed with the Amish community. Amish growers were looking at creating their own markets and had been contacting our local food cooperatives who knew the work that we were doing from the farm and then building Sprout, and introduced us to Amish growers who were looking for meat markets to additional Amish growers. And so it started with just 1 or 2, and that was probably, maybe back in 2013. And we are now working with 15 Amish families, 2 different Amish cooperatives. 3 of our top 5 growers are Amish growers, 2 who are certified organic.
Though Sprout was consistently advancing volumes of food, it wasn't sustainable. What Sprout really needed was a place of its own, a facility that had the infrastructure needed to truly be a regional food hub. Once again, partnering with community development, foundations, resource institutions, and many regional champions, an underutilized warehouse was identified. The facility was centrally and conveniently located for growers and had excellent trunk highway access. By leveraging and engaging community partners from local and regional foundations, state and federal funders, Sprout was able to secure over $400,000 for the construction and build-out of the nearly 10,000 square foot facility. And now, this place has become a destination with 2 fully licensed commercial kitchens for value-added food production and an abundance of refrigeration and frozen storage space, and the infrastructure required to aggregate and distribute hundreds of thousands of pounds of locally produced commodities has been established in central Minnesota. The Sprout Food Hub proudly hosts the region's first year-round indoor marketplace, with 6 events scheduled for 2017, encompassing food, art, culture, and agriculture. Sprout continues to work with more than 80 family farms throughout 15 regional counties in central Minnesota. Their innovative Healthy Choices CSA program now serves 3 hospitals, has won national recognition, and continues to grow beyond central Minnesota. Sprout continues to provide technical assistance to advance market opportunities for growers and makers. But most importantly of all, they are getting real food to the mouths of real people. Thank you for becoming part of the Sprout story. Healthy, fresh, and local.